Hello YouTube, this is Al coming to you from Kindred Souls of Brooklyn. If you haven't already subscribed, please do. And if you want to shoot me a comment, please do. I could be reached by email at connection@kindredsoulsofbrooklyn.com, or you could just leave a comment right there on the video. Folks, tonight I want to do a very special video on John Lennon. And the 37th anniversary of John Lennon's assassination is coming up on December 8th. And I just wanted to put something on film, on digital, whatever you want to call it, to commemorate this. And not to commemorate his death, but to commemorate his life. And I just wanted to make a video that included things that a lot of people just don't know about John Lennon, or things that are really like kind of brushed over or glossed over, because the guy did so much in his life that sometimes the huge things overshadow the everyday things in life. And I think it's the everyday things in life that endear people to individuals like John Lennon. And I just want to say for myself, there was never a time that I didn't know about the Beatles. I'm going to be 52 years old this December 24th. I have an older brother and sister who are 9 and 10 years older than myself, and they were always listening to the Beatles. So my first recollection of the Beatles was the Yellow Submarine movie. I remember that was always on television, and that's like the first time I ever remember really watching the Beatles and thinking about their music. And so that was like my first real recollection of it. But even from an early on time, I just seemed to gravitate to John Lennon. I don't know why, I just seemed to have. And even at an early age. And it just seemed like his lyrics were more gripping for me. And if anyone's wondering out there, John Lennon got kind of bored in the Beatles. So in the beginning, he did most of the singing, and him and Paul McCartney pretty much co-wrote most of the songs and all that. But the actual percentage is 57% was sung by John Lennon, and 43% was sung by Paul McCartney, Sir Paul McCartney. So that was just on a recent Sirius radio show that I just listened to, so those stats are pretty on the money. But I just wanted to concentrate in this video on things that, not a lot of things that people know about John Lennon. And because I'm from Brooklyn and I worked in Times Square for the longest time, I worked in leadership role in the Disney Times Square store. It's the flagship store. And a lot of things I picked up because John Lennon lived at the Dakota. The Dakota is on 1 West 72nd Street, right near Central Park. And folks, I just want to do a plug for New York City. If you've never come to New York City, and even if you have, I really suggest you guys come into New York. It is absolutely beautiful. Whether it's summer, whether it was winter, there's so much to do here. And when you come here, if you've never come here before, you could really see why John Lennon fell in love with New York. He was from England, and I guess, he had met Yoko Ono, and they decided to settle over here. And he was very active in the anti-war movement, which actually hurt him because for 4 years the government tried to kick him out of the United States. And it wasn't until 1976 that was eased up. And I guess it was kind of John Lennon's fault because he was very vocal about anti-war sentiment, and he made a lot of songs, Give Peace a Chance and things like that. And it wasn't the most popular stance to take at that time, with us being in Vietnam. And I think probably he should have come out. One thing he should have probably done was been a little more clear about supporting the soldiers, being against the war, but supporting the soldiers. So I think that was his stance, but he never really was clear on it. But as I say in this video, I wanted to bring out some things that not a lot of people know. Now, getting back to New York and Times Square, one thing that John Lennon loved about New York and America was John Lennon loved vanilla milkshakes. And in 1975, my father and I actually walked by him and Yoko Ono. John Lennon loved going to Nathan's, which was in Times Square, up until maybe 15 years ago. And he would always go in there with Yoko Ono and they'd get vanilla milkshakes. So my father and I went to see the movie Tommy, who, of course, my favorite recording star is Elton John. And right behind that, quick behind that, is probably Elvis. So Elton John was in a starring role in that movie as the Pinball Wizard. So we had just seen the movie, and we had left the movie theater. We went to Nathan's. If anyone knows me and has watched my videos, I'm a huge fan of Nathan's. Got a couple of videos on it. Probably eaten 1 million hot dogs in my life. And anyway, we were in there, and we actually, unbeknownst to us, John Lennon and Yoko walked right by us. We saw folks standing in like a circle. That was John Lennon. We can't believe it. He was here, whatever. And come to find out that they went in there a lot and just love to go in there and get milkshakes. So that's something that not a lot of people know about John Lennon. Another amazing thing, staying on the Times Square topic, is that if anyone goes to New York City, of course you're going to end up in the Disney store. It's the flagship store, 2 levels, amazing store. Like I said, worked there for 4 years. And what's so amazing about this place is that what a lot of people don't know, and even the folks who put the murals up, there's murals all around the first floor of all famous buildings. And of course, there's Disney characters intermixed in these murals. Now, the most amazing mural, and again, it just hasn't been written about. I'll probably do a video on it. When you come off the elevator from the 2nd floor, going to the 1st floor, there's a mural of the Dakota building where John Lennon lived and where he was shot. And right outside the Dakota building, it's a night scene, and it shows the big bad wolf outside the Dakota building at night. And of course, that's, in my thinking, that's supposed to be Mark David Chapman standing out there waiting for John Lennon. So that's one thing. Another thing that people don't know about John Lennon is that in 1965, he met Elvis Presley with the Beatles. And it wasn't a very impressive meeting. They weren't too crazy about one another. They got along okay. I imagine they probably did some drugs because Elvis was into drugs. So were the Beatles. But one of the most amazing things that John noted from that meeting was that it was the first time he had ever seen a remote control. Elvis loved televisions. He loved them and then he hated them. He shot him out at the same time, which is on another one of my videos. But that was the first time the Beatles had seen a remote control. And what John Lennon was known for too, which made him very endearing, I think, was he was one of these guys who could be very sarcastic. And that got him in trouble a lot of times. But when he first met Elvis, he walked in, and what's the first thing he said to Elvis was, "Elvis, why don't you make music anymore, rock and roll music? What are you making these dumb-ass movies for?" Because if anybody knows Elvis, people, even Billy Joel talks about this. They're like, what happened to this guy? He was so cool. He came back from the army. He got into Hollywood and starts making all these crazy, dumb movies like Clam Bake and Harem Scarum, and, you know, not many good music, not songs came out of it. So it wasn't until '68 Elvis came back. He, had some decent music. But anyway, that's what John Lennon told him. And Elvis gave him like his famous Elvis sneer, and he wasn't too crazy about what he said. But apparently they got along after that. They made some music, and that was like the history of the Beatles meeting Elvis. And they never met him again after that. Another thing I wanted to bring out that a lot of people don't know is that if you've seen footage of John Lennon, and I haven't really seen this written anywhere, because they show John Lennon and Yoko Ono on a beach, and this is right after 1974 when they got back together again. And that beach is South Beach. It's in Staten Island. If you come to New York, it's only like about a half hour to 45 minutes to go to Staten Island from New York City. So this is South Beach. It's also very special to me. And Matt, I know you're probably watching, but it's where my son Matt took his first steps. And my son Matt is a musician, and he's an amazing guy with music. And anyway, it's the first place that my son actually took steps. But if you see those famous videos of John running back and forth and on a beach, that's actually done in Staten Island. And you see the Verrazano Bridge right there. So it's an amazing place to go as well. And if you come over, if you're a John Lennon fan, I suggest you go in to see it because it's pretty cool. What else did I want to talk about? John Lennon at the Dakota building. Yoko Ono still lives there today. Yoko's worth a lot of money. She's worth about $600 million, quite a bit of money. But the Dakota building is a very famous place to live. And just some notable people who've lived at the Dakota, I have a listing of it. Lauren Bacall, Leonard Bernstein, Connie Chung, Jose Ferrer, Roberta Flack, Judy Garland, Joe Namath. And also, if it's one of those places that if you live there, you have to pass the board of directors. And there's also been some very famous people who weren't allowed to move into the Dakota because the board didn't like them. Now, I don't know if Yoko was on the board or not, but some of those people were Gene Simmons of Kiss. They didn't want him in there. Surprising one, Billy Joel. I mean, a New York guy. I can't believe he didn't make it into the Dakota. But they refused him. Carly Simon, who was a singer in the 70s. They didn't let her in there. And neither did they let Melanie Griffith and Antonio Banderas. They were both kiboshed as well. So it's just pretty interesting. But I really suggest you go to see the Dakota building. John Lennon's Strawberry Fields is right across the street. It's where he went with Yoko Ono and Sean. Many, many a day they played in there. Something that I haven't really seen written or talked about is that John Lennon's ashes were actually spread in Central Park. And they were spread right where that mosaic is that says Imagine. So that might be something people want to check out as well. Like I say, John Lennon was an amazing guy. He was taken from us way too early, and the world misses him. He would have been 77 years old this year, and who knows what he would have been doing. It would have been fantastic. I'm sure him and Paul would have gotten together eventually. There was a big rift in that relationship for a very long time, and in 1975, when Sean was born, I think things started getting better. I think at one point John Lennon called Paul up and he said, "Yeah, I'm a house dad and I'm making bread and I'm cooking breakfast every day and I'm going to the park." And it was actually a good time for John Lennon because Beatlemania had settled down. He said he was able to walk on the street. People really didn't bother him that much. And when they did come up to him, he would sign an autograph here and there. That whole Beatlemania thing was over. So he really enjoyed his time in New York, especially after the whole citizenship thing was over. And that's why it was such a shame that he was taken from us in 1980, because he was 40 years old. He was ready to record again. He recorded Double Fantasy, and it was just a shame because who knows what he might have done. But folks, I really appreciate you tuning in. We could talk about John Lennon all day and all night. I just thought it would be really cool to do this video on him. And if you have any comments or suggestions, I think in the future I'm going to actually go over to Manhattan. I'm going to take some footage of the Dakota building and just some different areas of interest. Like I said, the Disney store. Just something that, and if anything that you guys want to see, please just give me a shout. I really appreciate it. But I just wanted to put something on film, on digital, because the anniversary is coming up, and we just want to say how very special John Lennon really was, how much of an inspiration he was to everybody, especially to artists like Elton John, who Elton John sung Whatever Gets You Through the Night with in 1974. It was actually the only #1 song that John Lennon had after he broke up from the Beatles. That song is on Walls and Bridges that came out in 1974. You might want to check that out. But anyway, thank you very much for tuning in. I really appreciate it. Thank you very much. Have a magical night, and I'll see you real soon. Thank you very much. Have a good night. Bye-bye.